Hi, welcome to Nap Time Nutrition. I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition and Toddler Test Kitchen. And with me today, I am so excited to have Debbie Zeichner, LCSW, parent coach and mindfulness educator. And it's exciting because we want to talk about a topic that's been coming up on Instagram, and it's the subject of paying kids for chores. This is kind of a timeless subject, but right now it's particularly imperative to talk about it because we are home with our kids all the time. We have a lot more dishes to do and the normal unending pile of laundry, and we can have them help. But let's talk about how. So thank you so much for joining me, Debbie.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, so excited because as we were talking about before this segment started, this is not what my expertise is. And me, myself and along with other parents need this information. We want to make sure that our kids have an internal compass when it comes to these things and also value a dollar. And also, I'm going to give a spoiler up front on my agenda, which I was very upfront with Debbie about, just in case you viewer or listener get distracted by kids or dishes. I wanted to have Debbie on to talk specifically about charging kids for events or specifically for treats. And this was really addressed by a couple of different Instagram accounts, Tiny Bites Nutrition being one of them, and Noreen Hunani Nutrition being another one, saying that we cannot charge our kids for food, whether it's a granola bar or an ice cream. And so with that agenda up and out front, I'm going to bring Debbie into the conversation and ask some questions. So first, there are a lot of benefits to being kids' responsibility around the house. So
absolutely. When you were saying that now that kids are home, and my first thought was, yeah, there's more hands to help. Listen, it's really about, I always like to think about making our family a team, that we're all in this together, and that being a family member and being within a family, that we all have certain tasks, we all have certain responsibilities that we take part in, because it's part of what makes our team run smoothly, right? We all are here to help each other. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful way of teaching responsibility. And I think kids, what's so important to know is that kids are natural pleasers. They want to help, right? They want to feel a sense of belonging, which refers to connection. And they want to feel a sense of significance, that they are valuable and that they have something meaningful to contribute. So as you see with even our youngest ones, right, our little toddlers who are copying everything that we're doing, right? They have their vacuum cleaner out and they're vacuuming as we are. They're washing. I mean, they want to help because it's what they see us doing. And it's just such a beautiful way for them to develop a sense of autonomy, to learn, and to feel like they're contributing to the family. And I think when that's introduced at a young age, or at any age, it doesn't even have to be a young age, at any age, it's just the way that everybody can feel that they're giving back. And that when that becomes the atmosphere in the home, it feels very comforting, it feels very healthy, and it takes the stress off.
Yeah, and there was a meme that I saw last week. Some of the memes lately have been really stellar, but there was one that said behavioral expert, your child will copy the behavior you model. And then underneath it said, parent, not a chance, they are not cleaning anything. And I was thinking about that. Like, I laughed at it at first, and then I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, they model whatever we do if we do it with joy. Yeah. So if we're eating chocolate cake with joy, they want it. Yeah. And if we're eating cucumbers with joy, they want that. And so if we're vacuuming with some awesome music on, and we can somehow infuse that with joy, they will also want to be part of that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's inherent that kids like to help. And there's also things that, listen, do they want to stop, playing Minecraft or building their Lego tower in order to stop and help us vacuum? Yeah, probably not. And so I think to be able to understand that and empathize with that, yeah, sometimes it's hard to stop doing something that we're really enjoying to do something that we may not want to do. And I could still really use your help, right? And so I think it's just important that we find the way to tap into a child's natural desire, their inherent desire to help, to please, to be part of something, and to feel connected. And I think that's what helps. And we just have to be realistic about the fact that, yeah, sometimes we can vacuum with joy, and other times it's like the last thing that we want to do, and that's okay, right? So I think it's just recognizing and empathizing with our kids who also may not want to do that.
And I really touched on that. Actually, Rachel touched on that when I interviewed her, Rachel from Nutrition in Bloom, who actually connected us. And we were talking about that empathy part and how empathy is so important right now, that the kids are going to throw tantrums over food or whatever else. And we can just get on their level and say, you know what, this is a really difficult moment right now, and we are all having a rough time. And that empathy is something that is so important to cultivate. And if it doesn't come naturally to you, it's something to really focus on. It's something concrete to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because at the end of the day, all of us, including our kiddos, they want to feel seen, heard, understood, and accepted. Yes. And as you said, Yaffi, I mean, this is a crazy time for all of us right now. And our kids are, some of our kids are absolutely loving it. I mean, my two kids are like, they're in heaven because they don't have to go to school. It's kind of a free for all. But for some other kids, and they have their moments, but for other kids, they're really missing their friends. Some kids who really thrive on that structure and routine, they're just really out of sorts. And that can create a lot of anxiety. And that anxiety and that uncertainty ends up coming out in the form of aggression. So sometimes when we see kids who are hitting or biting or pushing or, just getting just more aggressive, we can tend to see it as this bad behavior. And yet when we can slow down and look at it as, okay, my child's just reacting to, this is just a reaction to what's happening in our environment, that they're having a problem that they don't really have a solution to, it completely changes our perspective and how we're able to approach them.
I think I have a little one here who needs to be seen.
You do have a little one.
What's up? Screen change.
Oh, screen change. I'll edit this part out of the podcast. But right now, I need to mom for a second.
Go mom for a second. You do it.
Oh, geez.
Funny that should happen right after you were talking about how sometimes it's difficult to stop doing what you want to do something that you don't really want to do. And the thing is that you were saying that applying to kids, but I really think that's the theme of this entire era of time.
Yes.
Is stopping doing what you want to do something you don't really want to do. And I was planning on making a point of that at the end, that we as humans put a lot of thought into our life choices. And for some of us, we're experiencing our second careers or third careers, and we've hit bumps along the road in life that led us to where we are, but we have to put everything on hold. Our personal choices have become somewhat irrelevant in the face of what's going on. We have to stop everything. And so I think your point about that, and when we can really think about that and meditate on that and use that to be empathetic with our children, that could be very powerful.
Absolutely. It's like we have this mini grieving that's going on, right? This grieving for the loss of what our normal was, and as that big term going around, and creating our new normal and what that looks like. And that's hard. And I think every day it changes. What was normal yesterday may not be normal tomorrow, may not be normal today. And so I think we're really being forced to have to figure out how to move with that. And I think that we're actually in such a beautiful position, talking about modeling, to be able to model this for our kids, right? And model what flexibility looks like, and modeling how to handle disappointment. And, I was supposed to, sit here for this podcast interview and not be interrupted, and then I'm interrupted, and then so how can I roll with that, as we were talking about before. And so when we do that and then are modeling that for our kids, that's such powerful learning that's taking place, which is we're not even aware of it, and that's what makes it even more awesome.
Right. And it's also, if we're modeling things, it's important to not only play with our kids and to teach our kids the way we're suddenly expected to be teachers, but to also model that there are responsibilities around the house that need to be taken care of. We still have the laundry. If you save all of your house cleaning for when they're sleeping, you will be burnt out, and they're not going to really see what what life is. We have a good opportunity
Yes.
here. And yeah, okay, so getting back on track. So we talked about the benefits of giving kids responsibility, that boost of confidence, that connection with the parent, and an opportunity for praise. There are so many times in parenting that we have to say no, that it's so great to seize any opportunity to say yes, or to create an opportunity to give them a pat on the back and tell them good job. And this is really a good place for that. And they're also learning a skill.
Yes.
I always like to say my chores when I was younger, I didn't have to clean my room. So if you saw my room now, it's a disaster. I didn't have to do laundry. I learned how to do laundry. Okay. And I can cook, which it took me a while. And now I'm starting on my second cookbook that I'm writing. And nobody would have seen that coming. But my chores when I was younger were balancing the pool and the hot tub in the backyard, and vacuuming the rugs my parents insisted on keeping in the backyard in Arizona. That's like torture.
Oh my gosh.
So now that's what I know how to do.
Yeah.
It's not helpful. So if we can involve our kids in chores that are helpful, these are life skills moving forward.
Absolutely. These are life skills. And when I work with parents, when I teach parenting classes, one of the activities that I always start off with is talking about what are some of the current challenges that you're having with your kids. So I hear things like tantrums and meltdown and acting out and aggression. And they'll say, and then if you could imagine your children in 20 to 25 years, what kind of life skills or characteristics would you hope that they would have? And oftentimes that's what you hear. You hear responsibility, you hear problem solver, leader, good communicator, compassionate, right? So that's what everything that we're doing now really, offers us an opportunity to teach these life skills that we want our kids to have when they're younger, because they're not skills that our kids are naturally born with. They're really ones that must be taught. So we do have an opportunity.
Yeah, and I usually work with feeding, and eating is something that comes naturally. Folding laundry does not come naturally. Vacuuming does not come naturally. We're not born with these skills like we are with our knowledge of hunger and fullness.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we've established that responsibility around the house is a good thing. Should kids have assigned chores? Like per child, this is your assigned chores, or should it be a little bit looser?
So I think it really, and I mean, I'm sure you'll hear me say this throughout, that it really depends on the family, and it depends how a family best operates. For some families, assigning chores and each child has a specific list of chores that they do really works well. Some families are more flexible. Maybe one day one does, if there's siblings in the home, one does, the dishwasher this day, one takes out the dog the other day. But it really just depends. In my opinion, the most important thing when establishing what these responsibilities are, these family responsibilities, are doing them with the kids' involvement. So rather than saying, you're going to do this, it's saying, listen, these are the things that need to get done. I really need your help. Do you want to put out the napkins at dinner time, or do you want to be in charge of the forks? It's up to you, you decide, right? So being able to have a conversation, almost like a brainstorming session, looking at it as teaching problem solving skills. I have a problem. The problem is that there's all these chores that need to get done, and we need to find a solution, and I need your help with that. So involving them in the process is one way to really gain it makes it a higher likelihood that you'll get some cooperation, because they've been involved in creating that, and they get to have a say in what that responsibility might be. So that's much more likely to, again, have them be a little more interested in cooperating. Not to say that they're going to jump up and down and say, "Yay, I get to take out the dog," or "Yay, I get to do this." However, being able to know that they're contributing something, and that they're being part of that process is really beneficial.
It's amazing, because this really echoes my whole thing about involving kids in meal planning as well.
Oh, yeah.
When you have kids, yes, it's the same concept exactly. When you give them a buy-in, when you give them the responsibility, and that's also age dependent. You can't ask a 3-year-old what he wants for dinner 2 nights from now.
Right.
That's not developmentally appropriate. But as they get older, they can start to contribute ideas to the meal plan and participate in the cooking. And this is the same concept.
Yes, absolutely. Well, what you can say to a 3-year-old is, I'm going to be cooking dinner tonight. Would you like to have chicken or vegetable? Whatever, like just being able to give them a choice is one way that you're involving them. And yet you as the parent are completely in charge of the choices, in the same way that you as the parent are completely in charge of all the responsibilities that need to get done and getting your kids help in terms of divvying up who's going to do what. And also knowing that maybe a child takes on one of the family responsibilities, one of the chores, and it's not going so well, or they're not following through with it. At which point you can come back and say, gosh, we talked about you doing this and I noticed it's not happening. What's up? What's getting in the way? How can I help you? Right? So that there's always that opportunity to reevaluate, that things aren't so fixed in stone, that there's always time to go back and try over, reevaluate, maybe they'll say, well, I decided I don't like to do that. I want to do this instead. Right?
Yeah.
At which point we can say, great, you know what? That works for me. I could really use your help with that. Thank you. I'll find it.
I love that. A lot of times we as parents think that any choice we make is kind of permanent.
Yeah.
And there are the bigger choices and the smaller choices. You decide what to put on the table, sure, but sometimes dinner is a fail. Sometimes you burn the dinner and you put it out and nobody's eating it, but it's because it's burnt. And you know what? You can always change tack, and you can change tack with chores and even with school choice. It seems like such a heavy decision, but if something's not working out, you can change your mind and do something else. And I think that's a really important concept for us to remember, that just because we make a decision doesn't mean that's the final decision forever and ever.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of confidence and follow through, you mentioned follow through. Let's talk about expectations, because my twins are 6.5. And honestly, I've never been so happy to have twins because they have each other. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But when they fold the laundry, they don't do the job that I would do if I was folding the laundry. So it's, as I mentioned, it's so important to use this as a confidence building opportunity. And it's important to remember that. So how can we keep our expectations in line?
So I think it's having realistic expectations. So for one, I would say that the first step is to take time for training. So we can't expect our kids to know how to fold the laundry if we haven't taken the time to show them how to do it, to practice with them, to have some fun with it, to do it in kind of a silly way and look at it and say, is this right? Did I fold it right? At which point they'll say, no, mommy, you didn't. You say, oh, can you show me how to do it? Right? So taking that time to really train them. And knowing that if that's the responsibility that you're going to give to them, which for their age, may or may not be realistic, especially for a 6-year-old boy who may not have the patience to fold, in the way that we would like. So we have two choices. We either lower our expectations, right? Not expecting it to be here and perfectly pressed and folded, but knowing that they're going to do it in the way that is age appropriate for them. Or we can give them another responsibility to do. Maybe we fold the laundry and they're in charge of finding 2 socks and putting the socks together and lining all of those up. So I think this is where we as parents have a lot of choice and have to recognize that it's important not to put so much pressure on ourselves and not to put so much pressure on the kids. Otherwise they tune out and they don't want to help, because now they associate that helping and chores with something so negative. Right? So I think it's having realistic, taking time for training, and having the realistic expectations. And again, knowing that we can change course. Maybe try that and you're finding, oh my gosh, my stuff that is supposed to be folded is completely not folded and it's taking you longer to do it. I would say, well, maybe, what else can they do? Like, let's find something else for them to try.
Right. So if I can fold laundry perfectly within 1 episode of Nailed It, I should not expect that they can fold it within that same time frame. This is a very exact time frame, by the way. No, but we have a tradition talking about doing it with joy. If I'm folding laundry, I get to choose what's on the TV because I'm folding. So we always watch a cooking show because it's fun things. We watch Nailed It because it's funny. So then I'm folding laundry with joy.
I love it.
Yeah, so they're not going to be able to fold the laundry within 1 episode of Nailed It. It's not going to be perfect, but I'm okay with that because it's really just bringing it upstairs and putting the pajamas in the drawer. And if the pajamas are all wrinkly, it doesn't matter because they're pajamas. So as long as I, as the parent, am okay with that, I can keep my expectations in an appropriate place, which will still make it a positive experience, building confidence, building responsibility for my kids. And that's really the way to go with it.
Yes, absolutely. Because there are some parents who have a particular way of having things done. And so if they have in their mind, this is how it must be done, and we give that over to our young child, and clearly it's not going to be done that way, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. We're setting our kids up for disappointment. So that's where those choices come in. So either we choose to let go and just say it's going to be how it's going to be, and I can be okay with that, or as I said, we say, you know what? I think I'll stick to that one. Here's one that I'd like you to do instead, because I could use your help. I know you're so good at finding all the blues that go together and putting the socks together to have them match, right? So there's definitely ways of working with it.
I think this is a really valuable point. I think it's also a valuable point to generalize this to marriage as well. That if you ask your spouse to do something, it might get done. It probably won't get done the way that you do it, but you got to be okay with that.
Yes.
It's got to be okay.
That's a big thing. Yeah, I think even just with this whole lockdown, I now lately our thing is I've been sending my husband's wanting to go to the market, and I have certain things on the list, and he'll pick out certain things that weren't on my list, right? And I just have to say, okay, thank you for going. I appreciate you going, right? So there's that letting go for sure.
Yeah. Hang on, someone's wanting to be seen again. Got the little guy. What's up? How about we have some juice in a little bit?
I want some juice.
Yes, I bought orange juice. We can have some in just a few minutes, okay?
No juice.
I didn't say no juice. I said in a few minutes.
Juice.
Yeah, he's very excited about juice. Okay. All right. So to the crux of the conversation.
He's excited about juice right now.
Yes, of course, because he's 3. Everything is right now.
Everything's right now. That's right.
Let me tell you, his brothers love that. So to the crux of the conversation. So we've established chores are good. We've established that we should give age-appropriate chores and have age-appropriate expectations concerning the completion of those chores both in timeline and quality. And now, should you pay children for doing chores? And on the one hand, you have the learning the value of $1, and on the other hand, we have entitlement. So you're the expert. What's the answer?
Yeah, and again, as I'll say, there's really no right answer here. So, I mean, if one way works for a family, that's fantastic. If that way doesn't work, there's other options. So, I mean, my personal view and the view that I take in parenting and positive discipline is that we don't typically pair like money with chores. That, as I was saying earlier, that chores are family responsibilities. They're things that are just expected. So if you're part of a family, I just expect you to help clean up. I expect you to look after yourself, because that's just what we do. I'm not necessarily going to pay you to do that. So when we're going to talk about, let's say, money management, so many families choose to give an allowance, a small amount of money. For many parents, it's like a child's age cut in half that they give weekly or every other week, whatever they decide. For some families, they use that allowance and they have 3 different jars, some for spending, some for saving, some for giving. And that's a way to teach money management, right? So that when a child gets a gift or they get the allowance, they can decide, a family decides together what percentage is going to go in each. Let's say we have 3 different jars, right? So that's a way to teach money management. And I mean, I know our family, that's come in really handy, because, my kids will all the time say, I want this. And I'll say, well, I'm not willing to pay for that. So if you have money from your allowance, then that's your choice. And assuming that it's nothing crazy, then we'll talk about and make that decision together. More often than not, they'll say, no, it's too much, because then if I spend it on this, I won't have it later for that. So, so that's, how we typically view this discussion. And I know it's a very big discussion. And again, I don't think that there's a right answer for it. I just think that kids are natural pleasers. They want to help. I think being able to tap into that child's desire to feel that sense of significance is important, and to create more of that atmosphere that our family is a team, that these are things that we do together. The other reason that it gets a little bit tricky when you pay a child for chores is what happens when your child says, well, I don't want to unload the dishwasher, or I don't care about the $5 that you're going to give me to do that. Then parents are kind of stuck. So then what do you say? Right? So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. is in that respect. And that's
Right.
one of the reasons why.
I remember this, I think my twins were about 4, and I asked one of them for a hug, and the response was, "What are you going to give me for it?"
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and it's not as if I'd been paying for hugs,
Right.
but just that concept of asking your child to do something as a member of the family, and the response being, "What do I get for it?" It's so, that's so difficult. So I suppose a good answer, and it does depend on the family, it does depend on family dynamic, as you mentioned, but a good solid answer would be give some amount of allowance and teach money management that way, just as you said. So you get the benefit of both. You get that internal compass, that internal drive to be a part of the family in multiple different ways, and the confidence that goes with that, and the skill building that goes with that. But you don't have that, "What do I get for it? I don't really need your $5."
And that's oftentimes what happens, right? Because kids at any time can say that, and then the parent is very stuck. And now you get into a power struggle, and now you're really getting into it when and then that whole atmosphere that you want of helping and being part of a family, and this is what we do, it kind of gets lost, and now it's more acrimonious. So, I mean, that's one of the main reasons that we find other ways of teaching. I mean, there's so many different ways of teaching the value of a dollar and teaching money and creating store, there's so many different ways that parents can do that. And again, I just think it's got to work for the family, whatever works for the family, and however they were raised.
Yeah. So we've been talking about real money until now, and a lot of the posts going around Facebook and Instagram now are focused on giving kids Monopoly money for different chores and then charging them for events, screen time or treats and whatever. So how do kids differentiate between Monopoly money and real money?
I mean, I think it depends on the age.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, this one's new to me. I mean, in positive discipline, it's a way of parenting that doesn't involve punishment and reward, because again, we're trying to build a child's internal sense of motivation, right? So it's helping a child choose to do the right thing without forcing or bribing. So that's really what.
So Monopoly money, even if it's paper, it falls under that because it still is a reward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be. This one is a little. I'll be honest, it's a little new for me, so I haven't heard it. So I think if it's one thing, if you're playing a game, I mean,
right.
So I just I think that in a family, ideally a coherent, healthy, harmonious family, everybody works together, and we don't have to pay for stuff. Because in a family, we just naturally want to be there and support each other. So that doesn't mean that kids get whatever they want. We have to set appropriate limits and boundaries 100%. And we do that in a way that's kind and compassionate and respectful to the child. So when there's a desire for something and that doesn't work for the parent, then that's up to the parent to be able to discuss and give, empathy for what that child wants and understanding what that child wants. And unfortunately, these are the reasons why we can't do that. Here's what is available to you.
Right. And coming from my perspective, when I teach about the joy of eating and mindfulness with eating with kids, and I know you're very into mindfulness as well. And I sent you, I don't know if you saw, I sent you a copy of the book I just put on Amazon, and people can actually get that free. So I don't feel so bad pitching that, because people can get their 2 months of Kindle for free now. And
I didn't get it. I'll have to look. I didn't get it.
Yeah, so I sent you a copy. It's called Beyond a Bite, and it's mindfulness activities for kids at the table. And the thing about mindfulness with kids is that it's loud. It's not like sit and contemplate your belly button for 10 minutes, because they can't do that. So it's all about the joy of food, and the joy extends to exercise, like moving your body. And for kids, exercise, much like food, isn't prepackaged with a logo of some diet company on it. Exercise doesn't have to be running on the treadmill, and for kids, it's not. It's running around the park. It's climbing trees. It's driving you up a wall, and so they should connect with the joy, the inherent joy of moving their body in a way that feels good to them. And if you're confined to your backyard, or if you don't have a backyard, you're running laps around the house, or whatever it is, Zumba videos, yoga videos on YouTube, there's a lot out there. I guess a lot of people are into this kids cosmic yoga on YouTube. I've heard good things, but they shouldn't be paid for that, because it undermines the inherent joy that is associated with that. And that's why they shouldn't pay for food, because food is something that nourishes us. And I am extending that to ice cream parties, because honestly, as a dietitian, I have the background to explain to you all of the ways that ice cream can benefit your body. But I'm going to focus on the joy, the connection that you have by sharing something delicious together. And that's important. And when we involve a reward, whether it's Monopoly money or actual cash, it undermines the inherent joy in the act.
Well, it makes me think about what you do. It to me, it's the same idea. And I'm assuming you have this viewpoint, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but I'm going to assume, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that in the same way that you don't reward a child with dessert.
Yes.
Right? That if they eat 3 bites, they get their dessert. I mean, you want them to enjoy the food because of the value of the food. Otherwise, they start to associate the food as something not pleasurable, and they're
a bargaining chip.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and they're
the food is a bargaining chip.
Yeah. So that then they lose that sense of joy. They're focused on the later, not what's right in front of them. So it's the exact same idea.
Yes. It is exactly the same. So it seems like a good idea to motivate your kids, but this is a short-term solution. This is a Band-Aid, and it's very, very attractive. We're probably using a whole lot of Band-Aids right now, probably even more than toilet paper. Yeah. And that's fine to have some Band-Aids. It's just that we need to look beyond. We need to look into the long-term picture of the relationships we're setting up. And if we are undermining natural, joyful relationships by involving a punishment reward scenario, that's really going to cause problems down the line. It's going to cause more hurdles for us to overcome.
Yeah.
So in the moment, if you're having a difficult moment, and we're going to get into your top parenting tips, you can always take a breath. You can always stop and take a breath. And something that I have learned that I bet you'll agree with is that there aren't many things that need to be handled in that exact moment. Mm-hmm. And if we have a difficult moment, you can take a step back and just breathe for a second and think about how to handle it. And of course, that doesn't extend to actual dangerous situations. A child's trying to touch the burner, for example. No, that has to be handled right away.
Right. No, of course. Yeah. And, really, Yaffi, it all goes back to relationship, right? That's when kids feel motivated, when they're in a healthy relationship. It's the relationship and that connection that they have with their primary caregiver, their parent, that helps them feel so connected. So if we need our child to do something or want to invite our child to do something, it's how we approach them in relationship. I know you're having so much fun watching your show on TV. You love that show so much. It's your favorite show. You would watch TV all day long if you could. And I really need your help setting the table. So do you want to turn off your show in 2 minutes, or do you want to turn it off now? It's up to you. You decide. Right? So in that sense, that's what a child who feels that connection, feels heard and seen and connected with their parent, and feels that connection from their parent, is much more likely to cooperate. I don't need to say, I'll give you this, do that. I can focus on building that connection with my child. Then my child wants to cooperate. So they may not get exactly what they want. They don't get to watch, 25 hours of their television show, but they get a parent who understands them. And that's what's so important. And that's how we build that internal motivation, really, whether that's in activities or food or whatever that is.
Right. It's so wonderful. It's such a great point, because that relationship is lasting. We have a real opportunity to cause some trauma with our kids with this situation where we're trying to work from home and parent and teach them. And I have so much empathy for these teachers who are trying to teach other students and teach their kids. It's unbelievable what's going on right now. But we also have an opportunity to look at our own relationships with our parents, and to look at our relationships with our kids and what we want for them, and to create something so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's a crazy time, and a good time if we choose to see the good in it and we choose to look for the opportunity.
Yeah. Is your class over?
No, it's going wrong. Wrong.
On a break?
Surprisingly, my first graders are bored from staring at a computer.
Ah,
So that
who
wasn't,
knew?
who knew? Okay, so with that, hey, sweetie, you want to sit down next to me? Okay, here, sit down next to me. So with that, can I ask you for your top 3 parenting tips to help us get through this crazy time?
Yeah, I would say probably first is a slowing down. I would say one thing that we have to really be mindful of is slowing down, because I think we tend to get a little bit snappier, a little bit more impatient when we're rushing and going and trying to do a million things at once. So if we could first slow down and empathize, really empathize with how difficult this is for us, empathizing with how difficult this is for our kids. Kids don't like to be bored. I mean, certainly there's a lot of creativity that is born out of boredom, but that's hard for kids, and kids need some help navigating that. So being able to really slow down and see them where they are, not where we want them to be, but where they are, and empathizing with their experience and letting them know how we see how hard this is for them and we're here to help is really helpful. I would say the second tip would be to ask more than you tell. And what I mean by that is that it's remembering this idea that from the moment our kids wake up in the morning till the time they go to bed at night, they're being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, where to do it, why to do it. Get up, eat your breakfast, stop watching your brother, go upstairs, time for your shower. I mean, all day long. So we're talking about also building responsibility. We're talking about building decision-making skills and problem-solving skills. So if we can involve our kids in the process and help them build these problem-solving and decision-making skills, it's so much, it becomes such a help when we're looking for that cooperation. So instead of go put your shoes on, it's, hey, buddy, what needs to go on your feet so we can go outside and take a walk? Right? Or instead of go take a shower, it's, hey, bud, it's time for your shower. Should we run up the stairs or should we crawl like tigers? It's up to you, you decide. Right? So trying to do more asking than telling, so that, because when we ask a child a question, their brain has to stop and search for an answer. So they have to say, well, wait, what does go on my feet? What do I need to put on my feet right now? Right? So again, it's another way of building these problem-solving skills, decision-making skills, and critical thinking skills, which is going to last them for a lifetime, right? And keeps them connected to us. And then I would say the last tip, honestly, is that we have to be kinder to ourselves. We have to be kinder to ourselves. Take the pressure off. There are no rules here. None of us have done this quarantine thing before. I mean, homeschooling isn't traditional homeschooling, because traditional homeschooling is you're going to, outdoor activities and you're going to museums and you're doing a lot of things. So I think we have to be gentle with ourselves, and what's working for one family or what one parent is doing or another child is doing may not be right for us. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to let things go. Our kids will be okay. They will be okay. Kids are so resilient. And I think the more we can take that pressure off of ourselves, kind of letting go of some of that guilt and shame, myself included. I mean, I do this for a living and I'm still like, oh my God, my kids have been on their device for way too long, right? I mean, none of us are perfect. So I think it's just letting that go. It doesn't exist. There's no such, I do this for a living and I'm completely imperfect. And I embrace that. I mean, that's part of what makes us human. So I think it's being a lot kinder and a lot gentler to ourselves, and really having some self-compassion, which then allows us to show up in such a healthier way and a more compassionate way for our kids. So those are my 3 tips.
That's fantastic. And I would love to build on that second, the second tip that you said about how you're asking a child to do something which really causes them to stop and think. And it really resonated because there was a lecture I heard by the therapist Pearl Abramowitz, who is right now very unfortunately mourning the loss of her husband to this virus. She's a fantastic therapist, and what she was saying that really hit me is when you feel yourself as a parent losing control, the best thing to do is to do something intellectual. Rather than spacing out, rather than hiding in your room and watching Friends. And by the way, I'm totally not down on that either. You get your red vines, do your thing. But when we get in that fight or flight, which is often where our kids are when they're having a tantrum, which is where we can be when we're dealing with something we don't want to be, we're thinking with the reptilian brain down here.
Mhm.
And when we start to think about something intellectual or connect with a friend, or I'm not going to say read the news right now because that does not fit with this concept right now.
Mhm.
It moves the thought from down in the reptilian brain up into a higher place. And
Mhm.
from that higher place, we can go back and deal with that situation at hand with a much more calm perspective, which helps
Mhm.
us and helps the child. So your point that you made about how that's great for kids, that's the twist on how it can help with adults. And I love that, because it
Yeah.
uses our natural inclination and our natural abilities to overcome a hurdle.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I mean, something even just to add on to that, that I typically use personally, and we talk so much about in mindfulness, is that when these big emotions, I mean, our kids are experiencing their big emotions that they don't yet have the brain development or the cognitive experience to understand and process and then verbalize. Something that's really powerful to do, this is really based on the work of Dr. Dan Siegel, who wrote The Whole Brain Child, is that idea of name it to tame it. So, when we are feeling really anxious or we are feeling really angry, oftentimes a natural reaction is to push it away, to stop it, to avoid it. I can't feel this. I don't like this. Make this stop. As opposed to in mindfulness, we talk about simply accepting and allowing it to be there, right? Like, okay, you know what? This is anger, or, right now this is anxiety. Almost like I always imagine, I'm a very visual person. So I always talk about like pulling up a chair next to, imagine pulling a chair up next to you and saying, oh, hey, anxiety, I know you. You come often. Okay, what do you want to tell me here? And that's also a way of helping to bring our prefrontal cortex back online, right? The prefrontal cortex is what helps us to regulate our emotions, helps us to problem solve, helps us to think clearly and rationally. So when we can move ourselves to that place, we're better able to do that for our kids, because our kids won't have that part of their brains developed fully until around the age of 25 or 26. So their nervous systems are dependent on our nervous systems for that regulation. So sometimes rather than pushing it away, it's being able to say, okay, it's here. I got it. Doing something for ourselves. So whether it's pushing the thought into an intellectual place, or I like to move. I like to use movement. So stepping outside, going into the other room and getting some tea, some of those traditional self-care practices are then what help us bring our brains back online.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's important for parents to remember that prefrontal cortex isn't developed. I had heard before 23, and you're saying even later. And it's so important. Yeah, it's so important to know that, because we can really be empathetic a lot easier when we understand that our children cannot be self-aware the way we'd like them to be, because they don't have the natural capacity for it at this point. As much as we would love them to develop it overnight, no amount of Monopoly money will get us there.
Right, no amount, exactly. So it'll get there. It's a big yet, right? They haven't developed it yet. And they're really dependent on our modeling for how to manage and regulate emotions. I mean, that was one of my biggest lessons I learned early on. I wish I had learned it earlier in parenting, is that our kids learn how to manage and regulate their emotions by how we manage ours. So, and that's not to say that we're going to manage them perfectly, because none of us do this perfectly. Right. So it's remembering, knowing that when we mess it up, when we yell, when we lose our temper, when we have those moments, which we all do, myself included, that it's a beautiful opportunity to go back and say, you know what, I need to try that again, or I need a do-over. I just yelled at you to put your shoes on, and that wasn't okay. And I'm sorry for talking to you like that. That wasn't respectful. And next time I need to take a deep breath first. Or next time I need to walk into the other room if I'm feeling my big feelings. So that's what I'm going to work on. And then that's it, right? Like, and then what does that teach, right? That teaches accountability and what a true apology really means and feels like and looks like.
And it also teaches to not expect perfection in yourself and in those around you, because as much as we would love to be perfect parents and modeling perfection, it's not reality. So as terrible as those moments are, and as much guilt as we might have over those slips, it also does model what a real relationship with your emotions looks like.
Yes. And I always say our kids don't need us to be perfect, because when you think about it, that's a lot to live up to.
It really is.
So one of the biggest gifts we can give our kids is that opportunity to see that mistakes are opportunities for learning, that there's no such thing as perfect, that's how we learn and grow, is when we make those mistakes. So, and that's why I feel it's so important that we take this advice for ourselves, right? So when we have 1,000 times a day, which we will, especially now because there's no rule book. That's where that grace for ourselves comes in. Okay, I messed that up, and you know what? Tomorrow's another day.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's a great place to close the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me,
You're
Debbie.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you tell everyone where to find you? I know you do. As I said, you're a parent coach and a mindfulness educator. You do a lot of things. You work with parents. You work with schools. You do public speaking, workshops. So where can people find you to work with you?
Yeah, so I kind of have two businesses that I work under, but I have Debbie Zeichner, LCSW.com is my website, and I have a very active Facebook page, Debbie Zeichner, LCSW Parent Coach, and I recently started a Facebook group called Becoming an Empowered Parent, so that would be a great place for parents to go and visit and hop in, and it's a place where I'm very active in there. That takes up, it's where I'm spending a lot of my time these days to give a lot of support. And then separately, I have a mindfulness business with a business partner called Mindfully Empowered, and that's where we go into schools and businesses and work with parent groups to teach the benefits and tools of mindfulness. And we're starting to do a lot more virtual offerings in that as well.
That's really beautiful. That's wonderful. And so we, in the midst of all of this, are coming up on a trifecta of holidays. So for anyone celebrating, we will be celebrating Passover. So happy Passover. And it should be easy to find all of the foods that you need. And for those who are celebrating the Christian holidays, happy Easter. And for our Muslim friends, Ramadan Mubarak. And everyone should have an opportunity to find mindfulness and restoration and relaxation in their holidays if they're celebrating. And for everyone else, we should all merit health very soon.
Yeah.
So,
thank you, Yaffi. Thank you so
much
much for the opportunity to come on. And I'm here to support and serve. So anybody, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Thank
you. And I usually close by saying when I'll be on next. And
it's
usually Tuesdays at 1:15, and it's all up in the air now. So just stay tuned, and I will be on as soon as I can be. Ideally next Tuesday with something, but we'll just see how it flies. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.